Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
I think about after 9/11, because I was interning about, I guess, 8 months after 9/11, 6 to 8 months after 9/11. And yeah, I think roles had shaken up. Drastic changes had happened as a result. New people were in charge of different things and learning new roles and having new systems and methods. And I think another consequence is, I think as an intern, for example, I was all of a sudden handed responsibilities that you would never hand an intern. So the younger people the responsibilities got pushed down onto the younger crowd, or the less experienced crowd.
Yep.
And had to grow up quick.
Yep.
Because I think, at some point, because of the 9/11, I was in charge of writing the president's briefs to wherever state he traveled that was in our region that we were responsible for. I would never be writing a brief that the president would see before that. So I think about
what was in the brief.
We had like a political brief that we provided to the president when he traveled to our states.
Okay.
The office that I interned in was the Office of Political Affairs.
Okay.
So it was Karl Rove's office. If you know who Karl Rove is, he's the kind of the political genius.
It's a huge name.
Yeah. So I interned in his West Wing office. So we prepared the president for the political dynamics that were on the ground. So who was running for election and what's the hot topics, and coal in West Virginia or steel in West Virginia, and the Rust Belt dynamics here or in Tennessee. It's whatever it is.
Would you do that if you traveled internationally too, or just national travel?
Just national travel. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were a political affairs office. So we really helped equip him politically. And that's also something that changed with the Bush administration. Is every decision was political, just like the Obama administration, just like the Trump administration. There is a political vetting process. So every decision, domestic decision, gets run through that political office. So there's this political layer that everything gets filtered through in ways that I think other earlier administrations did not happen.
Oh. And was that because we're just getting smarter? We realized how powerful the people are, and you need to position yourself and your party in a way that is positive, or that you can kind of spin. Is that why? Or?
I think the fact of the matter was, a president is never not running for reelection, or not trying to elect a coalition that will further his priorities. So I think they just got, the Bush administration with Karl just got really intentional about that process and what that meant for, in his first term, the reelection, or in the second term, building a Congress that would help him, further his policies, or nominate the right Supreme Court justice, or appoint judges that, or approve judges that would.
Was Karl sort of the brainchild behind that, running everything through the political lens?
I think he's really credited for that.
Really?
Yeah, just in a way that had not happened in the past, and being very data driven and using technology to change how campaigns are run. Karl is really the proponent of using technology to really change the landscape and start running for reelection on day one. I mean, they started building, teams in states really, really early in the campaign, or in the first part of the administration. So and then obviously the decisions that were made were vetted politically.
I see. What was Karl Rove's official role, when you were interning at the White House?
At the end, he was deputy chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, which is a fairly senior position. I think initially he was the assistant to the president for political affairs, or something like that, which is also senior. But he really helped the president get elected. He was the campaign director, I guess you call him, the director of the campaign. So he became just the domestic guy who informed the president on all things politics.
And wouldn't some say that he sort of ran George W. Bush? Like, had inordinate amount of influence?
There was, they called him Bush's brain, but which is not true. I would disagree with that entirely. Having been around both of them in a lot of circumstances, especially when there's international, Bush really made the decisions. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he wrote the book called Decisions Points. That was his.
It's a great book too. I read it years ago.
Yeah.
Really
But
enjoyed it.
he ran the meetings. He was making the decisions and was very confident in his leadership. And everybody worked for him. It was quite clear that everybody was serving at the pleasure of the president and that he was in charge and was making the decisions. And it was his philosophy, his leadership philosophy. It was his decision-making philosophy. It was his integrity. It was all those things permeated from the leader throughout the administration. So I think it would, I guess it was trying to make Bush look, silly or was belittling him. But my firsthand experience, I would refute that notion.
What's Karl Rove doing today? Do you know? Have any idea?
Yeah, I think he does. He has an article in the Journal or an editorial in the Journal often.
Okay.
And I think he is a contributor on, Fox and some of these other news organizations. I think he writes quite a bit as well. I think he just wrote a book a couple of years ago. So, but yeah, more than that, I don't know.
What, when you're writing these briefs, where are you getting your information from? Do you have someone who's feeding you information, or do you have to go look for it, or how are you getting that info?
Yeah, so we talk to members of Congress, we talk to leadership on the ground, we talk to state leaders, we talk to grassroots type individuals. And just kind of got the intel.
Just seeing what's going on in their state. What are the issues?
Right.
So you were talking to like some Congress men and women to prepare these briefings?
Yeah, these members of Congress would come often to the White House, and we'd have, breakfast or lunch in the White House mess. And in fact, I specifically remember meeting with Mike Pence when he was in Congress. He came and we had breakfast in the White House mess. I was soaking up every minute, of course. So that happened often.
Do you talk to him yourself?
No.
Okay.
I spoke to him at the time, but
okay.
Yeah, I was pulling for Mike Pence. I really liked Mike Pence. I think he's just an upstanding guy and just a really good guy, and has his head on straight. But anyway, that happened often. And we'd also talk to cabinet secretaries. So, for example, Secretary of Agriculture and his staff about various policies that were impacting the president politically on the ground. But yeah, so lots of input.
When you how much time did you get with Bush? I mean, you've met him a few times, correct?
Yes, many times. The brunt of my exposure to the president was anytime there was an international visitor at the White House. I would be the person providing direction to the president or briefing the president on who this is or making introductions or logistical decisions about where they'd go. So he and I never sat down and had a chat.
Never had a drink.
Oh, yeah. No, he never
He
did
hasn't
that.
had you out
He
to his
actually doesn't
ranch?
drink.
He doesn't drink.
He doesn't
That's
drink.
right. I forgot. That was in Decision Points too, because he struggled with alcohol at one point.
Right.
And he just quit.
Early in his life, yeah.
Yeah.
He just, quit.
So he would not drink any alcohol, nothing.
Yeah, so in fact, part of the job of the State Department is to provide our dietary restrictions for our leaders, and his restrictions were no alcohol every time. Yeah, so he didn't do that.
Did you see alcohol being limited at functions that he was at, or not necessarily?
No, it wouldn't have been appropriate to do that.
Oh, okay.
It would not have been a good host, I guess, to
Sure.